What is going on, everybody? My name is Christian Robert. On this channel, we talk stocks, personal finance, and wealth building. And today, I just want to do a fun little video comparing REITs to rental property. I've been talking about making this video for a while. I've been procrastinating about it, but this is going to be a very simplified video. I'm not going to get into any technical numbers about owning a rental property or this or that. I just want to share with you my opinions behind the two. I feel like you don't see many videos comparing the two to each other. So keep in mind, I build houses for a living with my dad. So I feel like I give some good perspective to the matter. This is just my personal opinions. I'm not an expert in real estate or anything, so I don't know what is more beneficial financially in the long term. Just sharing my opinions with you. But as always, if you enjoyed this channel, make sure you subscribe and like the video. It really helps me out. But let's dive right in. Now, I want to give you some perspective and some context for what I'm personally invested in as far as REITs. A REIT is simply a real estate investment trust. So owning a REIT is essentially owning a piece of real estate. It's just not physical real estate like a rental property. So one of the REITs that I have is Realty Income. It's one of the most fan favorite REITs of them all. I simplified the numbers, but I have roughly $9,000 invested in this, and this brings me a monthly return of $30. Next, I have Gladstone Commercial. I have roughly $3,000 in that, bringing me $16 monthly. Next is Apple Hospitality, which I have roughly $2,500 invested in it, and that brings me in $15 a month. Next is a newer position, AG&C. I have $750, and that brings me roughly $6 a month. Now, if you add up the total capital I have in real estate stocks, I have $15,250 invested overall, bringing me roughly $67 per month. Now, just to give you a little bit of context for why I'm comparing the two, in the area I live in, Michigan, if I wanted a single family home in good condition, I'm looking at paying an average price of $150,000. Now keep in mind, in any market you can find something well below, well above the average price. I'm just giving you some very generic numbers to keep it simple. And next, I would need a 20% down payment, $30,000. Monthly rent, if we use the 1% rule, you'd get $1,500 a month. And the mortgage, I took a total guess because I don't know mortgages. I'd assume at least $1,000 a month. Now let's get into some pros and cons. Now right off the bat, you can see that I wrote down a lot more cons than pros, but let's get into this a little bit. Now the pros, these three pros are huge, so there might not be a long list, but these three are very critical, and that is leverage. Now I always say, if you're trying to if you want to leverage your money as best as possible, physical real estate is the place to be. You can really stretch your money out as far as borrowing more and more money to, get that next property, etc. Next is capital appreciation. I mean, I know for my personal home that I live in, it is great to see it appreciate over time. I haven't been in it very long, but I know that it will appreciate over time. So for a rental property, it would be awesome knowing that year after year it's appreciating. Next is scalability. Now with stocks, you can't really scale it because whatever money you have is what you invest, and that can only bring you in so much per month. But with real estate, physical real estate, you can use that first rental property, you can leverage it, and that can help you get that second rental property, that third rental property. And so you can very easily scale your business with physical real estate. And that is a very big thing because nobody just wants to have one real estate property and that's all they want. The game is to, try to get that next property on a good deal, the next one, the next one. Now, the next are the cons. Now, this is very subjective because I'm just sharing how I would approach things because, we all have different personalities and opinions. But the first thing that jumps out in my head are repairs. Now, I would assume that you're constantly going into a rental property for minor repairs. Now, you could get that first renter and he's incredible. He never causes any problems, never damages anything. But at the same time, you could get somebody that's not so great, that is constantly mishandling things, breaking things, and you're constantly going in there and having to fix it. And I know from a construction point of view that it'll start adding up every time you have to call a plumber, an electrician, a this, a that. So there's one. Next is vacancy. Now, anytime that rental property sits vacant, that's money coming out of your pockets. Whereas a REIT, there is no vacancies. Your money's just invested and you get a monthly dividend. That's it. But with vacancy, I don't feel like I'm in a large enough market or a big city where if someone were to leave overnight or at the end of the month, I don't know how quickly I could consistently fill that vacancy. I'm in Michigan, as I've said before, and so I'm not in a big area like Los Angeles or New York City or something like that where you get a renter, you get a vacancy and boom, it's filled. It would take me a little bit of time, especially if you're doing it properly and you're scanning the person to make sure that their information is correct. Next are tenants. I mean, me personally, I don't really want to deal with tenants. You could have awesome renters, you could have terrible renters. It's a total crapshoot. You do not know what you're getting into. You want to hope for the best, but if you're being very realistic with yourself, this is something that is completely out of your control. Anybody's resume can look great to get into a place, but once they are living within your they're living in your rental property, you do not know what's going to come. Next is down payment. Now, for me personally, I can't even think about owning a rental property because as I showed you, I only have $15,000 invested in REITs. And in this scenario, I would need a minimum of $30,000 to, get that. So just using this scenario, I can't even get into it. So I would have to save up for a lot longer. And, for many people, saving that $30,000 or $15,000 is going to take you a very long time. Whereas with real estate stocks, you can jump into it with $10. If you find a real estate stock that is $10 a share, boom, you have one share. And it's a lot easier to grow that position because, every $10 buys you another share. And I'll get into that a little bit more in a minute. But the next is mortgages. Now, I don't feel very comfortable owning a mortgage on every rental property that I have. And 99% or maybe 85% of the people have a mortgage on their rental property. Now, if you're buying a rental property in cash, then we have a totally different video here, and my opinion will my opinion will change very drastically. But realistically, that's not the case. Most people, they put as little down as possible nowadays, and they have a mortgage. With the previous things mentioned in the market I'm in, I don't feel comfortable with all of those things. Next is court and eviction. Now, what happens when somebody doesn't pay? You have to start the process of eviction, and that ends up in court, costing you lots of money. Now, every state is different with eviction laws, but I have heard several cases from people around me in Michigan where so-and-so didn't pay, but the tenant was very smart and savvy and knew how to milk the system, and realistically they could live in there an additional 3 to 6 months rent-free because they're playing the whole eviction process game. And so not only have they not paid, but now you're sitting on 6 months of no rent coming in while you're in the process of eviction, which is costing you more court costs and whatnot. So that is a big thing. And then lastly, this is really just a culmination of all of the cons, and that's stress. Now, me personally, I'm 27 years old. I don't want to have that big stress or burden of all of these things. So as you guessed it, my pick would be REITs. You know, to me, it's just a very simple way to invest in real estate. If we go back to the first slide, and another big thing I want to talk about is that yes, it would be fantastic to have that one physical rental property, but the REITs that I have, each REIT is already heavily diversified within that company. I mean, Realty Income rents out like 7,000 different locations to big businesses. Apple Hospitality owns several different hotels. So, you know, I'm very well diversified with the little amount of real estate that I have. And so that's, to me, that's a big safety net. So, you know, you just have to figure out what your end goal is. For me, I'm all about dividends and, you know, bringing in passive income. And the beautiful thing about REITs is that when this $30 hits my account, it is automatically buying back half a share of Realty Income. So if we revisit this slide in 1 or 5 or 10 years, these numbers are drastically going to go up, because that's the beautiful thing about compound interest. And if you've seen my previous videos, you know I'm all about compound interest. So, you know, we might have to revisit this one in a couple of years just to see where the numbers are at. But yeah, that's where my head is at with the whole REIT versus rental property. Now, I will say, when we start getting into larger numbers, my opinion is definitely going to change. You know, if this $15,000 suddenly turns into $100,000, $150,000, then my mind might start thinking it might be better to either take out half of that and go look at a rental property, or take out all of that and look into a rental property. So once you start getting to larger numbers, that's when I would say my mind would start shifting towards the rental side. But yeah, I don't want to drag this video out any longer than it has to be. Those are just my opinions and thoughts about the matter. Comment down what you guys think. Would you prefer to own rental properties or real estate stocks? I'd love to hear your feedback. But as always, make sure you subscribe to the channel and like the video, and I will see you in the next one.